There is a woman asleep right now under 3 layers of blankets in a building standing on a plateau so high and so cold that the air outside her window cannot sustain human life without a mask and a battle against your own lungs. The temperature outside is approaching minus 60 degrees Celsius. Her room is 21 degrees. She is not shivering. She is not anxious. In about 6 hours, she will wake up, walk down a heated corridor, and go check on an instrument pointed at the stars because the sky above her right now is one of the clearest and most stable places on Earth to observe the universe for the exact same reason it is one of the deadliest places on the planet to step outside unprepared. Make sure to hit subscribe before watching the rest of the video. This is Concordia Station on the East Antarctic Plateau, over 3,000 meters above sea level, and this is an ordinary night for the dozen or so people who live there through the long polar winter. Antarctica is not one place. It is a continent the size of the United States and Mexico combined, and the difference between its coastline and its interior is the difference between a hard winter and a planet you were never built for. McMurdo Station, the largest research base on the continent, sits on the coast and records an annual mean temperature of around minus 18 degrees Celsius, with winter lows near minus 50. Concordia, jointly run by France and Italy on the high interior plateau, exists in a different category entirely. Its winter temperatures regularly fall to minus 60 and below. The air pressure is so low at that altitude that the effective oxygen available to the human body resembles conditions found at over 3,800 meters, and for months at a time, the sun never rises at all. Here is what almost nobody outside the field of polar science understands. The cold is not actually the hardest part. The cold is solved. What is not solved, what scientists studying these stations describe as the real frontier, is what extreme isolation does to a human mind that evolved expecting sunlight, social contact, and an open horizon, and does not get any of those things for the better part of a year. Let's start with the cold, because the engineering behind defeating it is its own kind of remarkable. Modern Antarctic stations are not tents. They are not huts with a stove in the corner. Halley 6, Britain's research station on the Brunt ice shelf, is built from structural panels made of fibreglass composite, using a special resin specifically engineered to endure temperatures of minus 56 degrees, and sustained high winds without becoming brittle. The entire station sits on hydraulic legs that can be individually raised, because the ice shelf beneath it moves year after year, and a station that could not adjust to its own foundation shifting would eventually be swallowed by the very ground it stands on. Inside, the heating systems run on a level of redundancy that would be considered excessive almost anywhere else on Earth, because here, a heating failure is not an inconvenience, it is potentially fatal within hours. Facilities engineers responsible for these stations describe a job where lives literally depend on backup systems for the backup systems, with multiple independent power and heating sources designed so that no single point of failure can leave a station without warmth. And once that heat exists, people use it the way you would expect humans anywhere to use it once they are not worried about survival anymore. Former McMurdo residents who have spent full Antarctic winters there describe rooms kept in the low 80s Fahrenheit, nearly 27 degrees Celsius by choice, with space heaters running on top of the building's own system. The dormitory buildings include saunas. McMurdo itself, despite sitting on a frozen volcanic peninsula at the edge of one of the most hostile environments on the planet, contains a gymnasium, a library, a coffee house, and an aquarium for marine research samples pulled from beneath the sea ice outside. People who have lived there describe acclimatizing so thoroughly to the warmth indoors that walking outside, even on what counts as a mild Antarctic day, comes as a genuine shock to the system. This is the same contrast that defines every extreme environment humans have learned to inhabit. The exterior tries to kill you in minutes. The interior is built so thoroughly around comfort that people who live there start to take warm rooms and dry air for granted, the same way someone in a temperate climate stops noticing their own furnace. But the engineering was never really the hard problem. The hard problem is what happens to a person's mind when the sun disappears for months and the nearest other human being outside your own station is, for all practical purposes, infinitely far away. Researchers who study what scientists call ice environments, isolated, confined, and extreme, environments that also include submarines and early space missions, have documented a measurable psychological toll among Antarctic winter-over personnel. Studies looking at crews who spend a full polar winter at remote stations have found a meaningful percentage developing symptoms consistent with depression or other mental health difficulties during deployment, a rate notably higher than equivalent populations who never left temperate climates. This is not a character flaw in the people selected for these postings. Antarctic personnel go through some of the most rigorous physical and psychological screening of any job on Earth before they are ever approved to deploy. The environment itself produces the effect, regardless of who you put inside it. The specific mechanism researchers point to is the combination of constant darkness, a fixed and unchanging set of faces for months at a time, and the simple structural fact that you cannot leave. On a ship, in a submarine, even in a remote village, there is theoretically a way out if something goes badly wrong. At Concordia, in the depth of winter, the nearest possible aircraft evacuation may be flatly impossible for months, not because of distance, but because the cold itself can fall below the temperature at which standard aviation fuel and hydraulic systems can reliably function. The isolation is not metaphorical. It is a closed door, for real, for half a year. What keeps people functional inside that closed door is, again, engineering, just a different kind. Stations deliberately schedule communal meals, movie nights, birthday celebrations, anything that creates a fixed social rhythm against an environment that offers no natural one. Researchers describe the deliberate construction of small rituals, a particular drink served on a particular date, a tradition repeated every single year regardless of who is currently stationed there, because a human mind without daylight and without new faces will create its own sense of time from whatever structure it is given. And stations have learned, through decades of trial and error, exactly what kind of structure keeps a crew sane through a winter that the sun itself abandons. The woman asleep under 3 layers of blankets right now is not unusual. She is one of dozens of people across multiple stations, on a continent with no permanent population, no native ecosystem capable of feeding a human being, and no natural reason for anyone to be there at all, except that the silence and the cold happen to make it one of the best places on the planet to look at the stars, study the deepest core samples of the planet's climate history, and understand what isolation does to people long before anyone attempts the same thing on the way to Mars. She will wake up. She will walk down a heated corridor in a building standing on legs that can lift it clear of shifting ice. She will check an instrument pointed at a sky with almost no atmospheric interference anywhere else on Earth, and outside the window behind her, in air that could end a human life within minutes without the right equipment, nothing at all will be moving, because at minus 60 degrees on a plateau this remote, even the wind has somewhere else to be.